Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us in this session of the Starting an Investment Club series. Tonight we focus on organizing for the first meeting. Folks, getting your investment club up and running smoothly and prepared to build a profitable portfolio of good quality stocks should be the goal of every investment club. And to accomplish this, it's important for your club to conduct a well-organized first meeting. Now, tonight's presentation, titled Investing with Friends Taking the First Steps to Starting a New Club, will help us do just that. Now, at this time, I'm delighted to welcome back our presenters, Theine and Ken Kavula, who presented the first session of this series, and who I've had the privilege of working with for many years. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our presenters, Carol and Ken.
Thanks, Dennis. I appreciate the introduction. Hi, Carol. It's good to be with you.
Indeed it is. Looking forward to another great discussion tonight.
We spent a lot of time in our very first session just talking about what an investment club is and how much it's meant to Carol and myself in our whole investing career, how much we've learned from the experience and how much we've been able to transmit to other folks. Carol and I have both been instrumental in starting a number of investment clubs, and what we're going to lay out this evening is how we approach the very first meeting when the interest is trying to be put together and when you're trying to gather a new group of people that might have the initiative to start a new club. It's not the easiest thing in the world, but it's certainly not the most difficult either. So let's get started and let us tell you what we think the first steps are at that very first meeting. It's an ongoing process, but the process is fairly simple, and it can be broken down into a series of steps. And we'd like to lead you step by step through the very first meeting, and then that leads us room to continue the series with the second and the preliminary meeting and maybe the first official meeting of the new investment club. If you're going to start anything, you're going to need a leader. Somebody has to take the initiative to start the process on its way. Somebody has to be the one to make some of the initial decisions, and sometimes you're going to have a small group of committed people, but one person is going to have to volunteer to coordinate the efforts and to make sure that all of the tasks get done. Let's assume that I'm talking to the leader this evening, and let's assume that this leader is the person that's not necessarily going to be the president of the new group, but will be one of the guiding lights of the new group as they get formed. The first thing you're going to have to do is to identify potential members. I would urge you to not be afraid to pull together a diverse group of people. My very first investment club was made up of people just that I worked with. I was the principal at a high school, and we pulled together faculty members from the school, also pulled together a few students that we had in past years, and some of them are still in that club today. The club is functioning at a pretty high level. It's been going now for about 22 or 23 years, but we quickly learned that if we could pull in folks from other jobs, other positions that had different life experiences, that our club certainly had a more diverse world view, and also we were able to get a much better handle on a lot more different types of stocks because we had a lot of folks that had a lot of different interests. So look for friends at work. Don't be afraid to talk to your neighbors, friends that you see socially. You might know 2 or 3 of those that might have an interest in investing. Don't forget your relatives, maybe sons and daughters, nieces, nephews, brothers, sisters, and don't be afraid to ask your friends to identify some of their friends. that might have an interest in a club. The only thing that I think is important is that you have a critical mass. You have enough people that you pull together that you have a chance of pulling this whole thing off. At your preliminary meeting, I would suggest that you need around 10 or so people or more to get the ball rolling. Carol, how did you pull together your very first club?
My first club was actually out of my neighborhood association. One or two people were interested in starting a club. It was a brand new neighborhood, and they posted a notice in our neighborhood newsletter. And so it was a whole bunch of new people that didn't know each other at all. And as you said, it was a wonderfully diverse group of nurses, teachers, some in the legal profession. I came from the technology area, so it was great to have a great mix of people and backgrounds.
As you create this list of people that you're going to invite to the first preliminary meeting, keep in mind right from the very beginning, one of the people that might end up being a good treasurer. I can't emphasize too much how important the role of treasurer is in keeping the records. It's not a job that takes a lot of time, but it is a job that you're going to need somebody very responsible and you're going to need somebody that is organized so that they can keep up to date on the records that need to be kept. I would assume that if you find a good treasurer that it's going to take them maybe an hour, maybe a little bit more than an hour if it's a large group per month to keep the treasurer's records. I know I've been treasurer of 2 or 3 different clubs. Carol, have you had the joy of being treasurer for one of your clubs?
I was that first treasurer that first club identified, and I would say on average it took me about a half hour a month actually, and we had a club of about 12. So I think that's pretty reasonable, especially with the online software that we'll be talking about.
Absolutely. The software makes the job extremely easy. You just need somebody that's organized and isn't a procrastinator. They have to keep the records right up to date. You want to also make sure that the people that are coming to your meeting have a genuine interest in learning about investing. Carol, you tell a kind of a cute story about some of the folks in your very first club. Why don't you share it with our audience?
Sure. As I mentioned, it was out of a new neighborhood. Well, it started off with an interest of about 20, and unfortunately we dwindled within our first year pretty quickly down to that 12 number I mentioned. It's because it was a bunch of new mothers who really just wanted a night out, you know, with some other adult conversation. So as much as they wanted to learn about investing, I think that they found they didn't have, you know, even an hour in between our meetings to spend on some of their learning and tasks. So just be aware that while you may have a very excited, interested group your first month, don't be surprised if a few of them drop out and realize maybe that this is not the right time in their life for it.
And we were very social when we started our first club as well. In fact, we had to pass a rule that we couldn't have any wine until after the meeting was adjourned, so that we could keep the meetings moving in a positive direction. This is a really great time when you're putting this first group together to find out if there's a local Better Investing chapter somewhere nearby. We have a magazine, Better Investing magazine, and if you go to the back of the magazine, you'll see a list of our chapters. You'll also be able to access that list by going to our website, betterinvesting.org, O-R-G. And if you click on the Chapters tab, you'll see where we do have chapters. If you're lucky enough to be located near where one of our chapters is centered, then we can offer support for a brand new club, and it's always really great to find a local resource person available. If you take the moment just to see if there's a chapter nearby, finding great help might be just a phone call away, and those numbers are readily available on the website or in the magazine. I'd advise you to have your first meeting in a private home, a library conference room, a school, a church, anywhere else that you can secure meeting space. But I will give you some advice. I would suggest that you try to avoid a restaurant, especially avoid a restaurant where you'd be sitting out with the general public. It's just too difficult to do any business, to have any discussion when there's somebody always hovering around trying to see if you want to take an order or if you have the right order or if you want to pay your bill or get your water glass filled or whatever it is. So I would avoid a restaurant if you possibly can, and I would try to avoid any food service of any major kind during the meeting. Now, that doesn't mean you should be afraid to have refreshments. Refreshments are great before the meeting starts, or they're especially great to have after the official meeting is over. They kind of get people to stick around, and you can discuss things and talk socially, find out some of the interests of the people, and it's a great time to get questions answered in a very informal way. Don't forget that beverages during the meeting are always appreciated, but keep them simple. You know, maybe coffee, maybe soft drinks. Keep them real simple and straightforward. Before you actually start that very first meeting, find someone who is willing to take a few notes. You don't have to call them minutes because that brings up the specter of being the secretary, and I know that finding a volunteer to be a secretary is always very difficult in a group, but just ask somebody if they can take a few notes, especially when you make a decision about something, and especially when you make an assignment to a certain person. You want to write that down, and you want to be able to recall it at the next meeting. It's also probably going to be necessary to have some kind of a sign-up sheet ready to go. You want to capture the names of the people that are at the meeting, their email address, their phone numbers, maybe even their street address, but especially their name, email, and phone will be invaluable as you move towards actually creating the club the very first time. And it's very important that this first meeting, even though it's preliminary, even though it's for information purposes, it's very important that there be an agenda and that there be a copy of that agenda for every single person. And make sure that somewhere near the top of the agenda, it starts with brief introductions and a little tiny bit about what each person is there for, what their background is, what they hope to get out of a club. And that agenda is going to help you set a business-like tone for the entire meeting. It's useful to remind folks right from the beginning that they are in fact setting up a business. The business is going to be funded with contributions from each one of the members, and the decisions that the partnership makes are going to control whether that business is successful or not as successful as you might want it to be. So it's really important to set those tones early on, and small things like an agenda are going to help you keep things. You don't want to be so serious that nobody ever smiles, but this is not mainly a social gathering, and you want to make sure everybody understands that. That means that they must understand that you're forming a legal partnership, and that partnership is going to be bound by written rules and procedures. You're going to pool your money, but the money that you put into that partnership is remaining in your account. So you're actually joining a number of accounts together so that you can all buy a portfolio, and in this case we're purchasing common stocks. We have to remember that in this legal partnership, everybody's money that they put in belongs to them, and they can take their money and leave the partnership at any time they wish to, according to the withdrawal rules, and those are going to be spelled out in this written rules and procedure called a partnership agreement. We've thrown a lot of terms already at folks. Some of them, it's the second time that we've talked about these things. Carol, are there any questions that we should be answering at this point?
We do have one from Anne. Based on my little story of time between meetings, she's wondering what would you tell prospective members about how much time they need to devote to club research or club homework between meetings?
You know, I think that's a great question, because folks don't want to spend a week getting ready for their investment club meeting. I think it's fair. I'm thinking through the clubs that I belong to, and I belong to a number of different investment clubs, and I think that if I give each club a good 45 minutes to an hour, that's a lot of time. There are some months when I might spend a touch more than that amount on a particular club, but in most months I would say that a half an hour to an hour is all the time that I devote, unless I'm making a presentation or unless I'm part of a committee, and then I might devote an extra half an hour, 45 minutes to the investment club that particular month. Is that kind of your experience as well, Carol?
That is indeed my experience. Unless, of course, you maybe have some other task like being the president that has to put together the agenda, or the treasurer. So sometimes the officers might have a little bit more, but yeah, I would say half an hour, 45 minutes is pretty reasonable.
Yeah, it's important at this preliminary meeting that that you've invited folks to, that you stop early and stop often to ask folks for their questions and for their comments. And that box at the bottom of this particular slide is so important. Nobody expects that just because you called the meeting that you're going to be an expert in everything to do with investment clubs. So that means that there might be questions that you can't answer. And all I advise is that you be very honest. You indicate that that's a question you can't answer, whatever it is, and you promise the person that you will find an answer to their question and have it for them at the next meeting. There are so many great resources available, and I don't think that somebody can come up with a question that will stump all of the folks that have been working in investment clubs for the last 50 or 60 years. Make sure that when you put this agenda together that these particular items are included. Talk about choosing a name. That's always a fun thing to do, and it's an important thing to do, because the name of the partnership is going to have to appear on various accounts and in various places. Make sure that if you need to, that you find out how to register your club's name. Talk about the accounting software, how it's available, what its costs are, and what it can actually handle. Talk about the importance of an EIN number. That's an employee identification number. Not only how important it is, but how you obtain one. Discuss brokers, low-cost brokers, medium-cost brokers, high-cost brokers. Talk about what you might want from a broker. Talk about whether or not you're going to need an account at a bank or a credit union. The partnership agreement will certainly be something that you're going to want to have on the agenda, as well as the amount of capital contribution, a possible meeting date, and a pretty nice discussion of Better Investing itself and how you become a member of Better Investing and what are some of the member benefits coming from joining Better Investing. In fact, let's look at these things a little bit in detail. The first thing on most agendas is a club name. And after you choose a name for your partnership, you need to find out where to register it. And in fact, you need to find out if you even need to register your name. In Michigan, we must register the name. It costs us a few dollars, and we can register the name for a 5-year period, and then we have to renew that name for our partnership. But Carol, you have a different story out in Washington State, don't you?
Indeed, in Washington, we do not need to register our name, and I asked many people in many places, and I've been told we do not. So I think it does vary a little bit about your state and maybe even at the county level how it can be different.
If you have some questions about that, I'd call the local county clerk. If they're going to be registering partnership names, I would assume in most instances the county clerk will either be doing it or will know how to get it done. And if you don't have to register the name, they'll be able to tell you that. You know, names themselves can be whimsical, they can be serious. The only thing that we ask, and that most counties in the country ask, is that they be unique so that you don't mix up two partnerships within the same county. So you can have very staid names like the Mid-Michigan Model Club, or you can have names that are a little bit secretive. We have a club in our thumb called HER, and for years nobody knew what HER stood for until they let it pass at a meeting one night that HER stood for High Estrogen Required. We have the Midland J-Vesters. They were originally a group of gentlemen involved with the they were involved with working with the Chamber of Commerce up in Midland, the Junior Chamber of Commerce, and we have a group called Women Who Count. We have Street Smarts, and there are interesting names throughout the entire country. If you talk to your local chapter, I'm sure they can give you hundreds of examples of great names and tried and true names.
One quick comment on club names. You might want to think about maybe staying away from women something or another. Even if you start off as an all-women's club, at some point you might want to change that. I recently visited a club that does have women in their title. There was a gentleman there. He says, "Oh, I found my feminine side." So they did eventually open it up to men, but just something to think about.
We have a men's club up around here, Carol, that's called 12 Hits and a Miss. They used to be an all-men's club, and they've allowed one woman to come in right now. So they've changed their name.
They adopted their name.
Yes. We must understand that there's software that can help the treasurer. And again, I want to emphasize how important this role of treasurer is going to be. Our software keeps the financial records for a club. Our software helps the club prepare the tax forms that have to be filed with the federal government. It helps prepare the tax forms that get passed out to each individual partner, and it helps keep track of the day-to-day operations, the capital contributions, the dividends, the stocks that are bought and sold. All of those things go through the accounting software, and that software is handled by our subsidiary, iClub. You can go to iClub.com, and we'll have some of these URLs for you later on in the presentation. But the software is available. It's tried and true. It's been tested for years, and clubs all over the country find that using the software makes the treasurer's job fairly simple. Again, focus on finding a responsible treasurer, and since you're starting a new club, I'd recommend looking for an assistant treasurer as well. It's just as fast and just as easy to train two people on how to be treasurer as it is to train a single person, and then that gives you some backup, and it also gives the first treasurer the idea that they don't have to keep the job for life. Go on, Carol.
One quick accounting question. How are expenses associated with setting up the club handled among partners?
Usually in the beginning those expenses are divided evenly among the partners. So if you have a subscription to the club accounting and there's 20 members, then you take the price of the subscription and divide it by 20. You do have options in dividing your expenses up as the club matures. You can continue to have those expenses allocated evenly, partner by partner, or you can allocate the expenses by the amount of the partnership owned by each one of the partners. That's a decision that you'll make as you form and then as you mature, but the accounting software will give you the option of doing it in at least 2 different ways. The EIN number is the employee identification number, and that comes from the IRS. You can get that number pretty simply online once you have a partnership name, but this is a task that has to be done because in order to open any kind of an account with a broker or a bank or a credit union, you're going to need your employee identification number. That number is also going to appear on all the forms that you file with the IRS and all the K-1 forms that you prepare and hand out to your members on a yearly basis, right around this time of the year, in fact, around February. The K-1s come out. It's just like a mutual fund that sends you the accounting, tells you what your capital gains were for the last year, tells you what your part of the dividend payment was for last year. Same thing is happening with a K-1, and every single member that was a member during the 2014 calendar year will get a K-1 this coming February. You're going to have a brokerage account at some point if you're going to buy stocks, and there are so many choices of brokerages. This list that I've put together is not exhaustive by any means, but it does have a brokerage at the top that maybe is unfamiliar to many of you. It's Folio Investing, and the reason that we've put it at the top of the list is that it's a BetterInvesting member benefit. Our clubs can do free trading with Folio Investing, and I'm not going to get into the particulars except to say that our clubs have absolutely no costs of any kind associated with trades that they make through Folio Investing. Now, there is a minimum number of members that the club has to have. Excuse me, it's a fairly small number of members, but once you join BetterInvesting and once some of your members become BetterInvesting members, then you can trade without any charge, buying and selling common stock using Folio Investing. I'm in clubs that use First Trade. I'm in a club that uses Scott Trade. Many clubs in my area use the other companies listed on the list here. And again, it's not exhaustive. There are many, many good brokerages, and almost every single one of them is familiar with investment clubs, investment partnerships, and they will be able to set up an account for you. Carol, what brokerage does the Puget Sound Model Club use?
We use Folio Investing, and my first club used TD Ameritrade, and as I said, when I went to get stuff set up at any of those brokerages, I've never had any problem getting our account set up, so worked great.
I think one thing you want to do before you actually choose a broker is you want to ask yourself what's really important. Are you going to want a checking account associated with your broker? Are you going to want to be able to transfer electronically money back and forth, broker to bank or bank to broker? Is it important that they have local offices? What's their fee structure? What kind of research is available on their website? What kind of reliability do they get? How transparent is the broker? I know that 2 of my clubs use First Trade. We love it because they give us a a number for our members so that they can access the broker account and take a look at the account. They can't trade, they can't make buys and sells, but they can actually see what's deposited in the brokerage account, and that's great for transparency in a large partnership. So a good discussion on what it is you want from a broker will help guide you to a broker. I think it's also important that you understand that not every broker is going to provide all of the services listed on this particular list. You're going to have to decide what's important, and then you're going to have to make a brokerage account based on the things that are important to you. Whether or not you create a bank or a credit union account is the same general idea. Your first decision is, are we going to need one because of the broker we've chosen? Is there transparency? Again, will our members be able to see into the account, not necessarily for withdrawing or depositing, but can they see that we've put the money into the account? Is that important? What kind of fees does the bank or credit union have? How accessible is it for the treasurer? You know, do you have to physically go to a branch to make deposits or withdrawals? Can you do it electronically? What type of accounts are you going to need? Keep in mind that fees are usually considerably lower at local credit unions, and if you haven't had experience with credit unions, you'll find that in today's world, most of them have fairly easy to meet rules as to who may join, and the credit union might be a better choice than a bank for some of the clubs. But again, this is a decision that has to be made, and it has to be made relatively early on because you will be collecting capital contributions from your very first official meeting of your new club. The next thing we come to is the partnership agreement, and we can provide all types of sample partnership agreements for your group to use as a possibility. My advice is take a sample and use it for a period of time. Use it for 4 or 6 or even 8 months, maybe even up to a year, and then after you've used it for a period of time, go through it in detail and alter it if you really need to make any alterations. The worst thing you can do, however, is to take a long document, maybe a 20-page document, and begin to go through it paragraph by paragraph at one of these preliminary meetings. Let the people take it home, let them read it, and then let them bring general questions about that agreement back to the next meeting. Assure them that the agreement has been tested over a period of many, many decades, and let them know that if they're going to have a lot of debate about what is in the partnership agreement, that's an easy way to doom a club almost from the beginning. At this first meeting, I'd focus on the officers that you're going to need, what their duties are. You might have everybody read how they can get their money out of the club. That's usually just a couple of paragraphs, and that will assure people that their money is available if they want to pull it out at any given time. And then again, the rest of the agreement, let them read it on their own and ask them to try to live with it, if it's at all possible, for the first 6 months to the year before they start making major amendments to what the agreement says. The important thing is not to have a completed partnership agreement right in the beginning, but to begin investment education and to begin investing as soon as possible. That's the interesting stuff. That's the stuff that people join the club for, and you just don't want to spend months going over your partnership agreement.
I completely agree with you on that, Ken. I think if you find that your meetings do start heading down towards getting bogged down, ask people to take it offline and have an email conversation about it outside the meeting.
Absolutely, absolutely. Carol, what is the capital contribution for the clubs that you've been involved with?
We have two types of capital contributions. We have kind of an initial investment of $100. That kind of shows that there is a certain level of commitment to the club, and then after that, it's $30 per month as a minimum.
The clubs that I'm involved with have a $50 per month minimum, but we allow any size capital contribution past 50. That seems to work out fairly well for the clubs that I'm in. They're relatively large clubs, 13, 14, 15 people minimum, up to 25 in one of the model clubs. But what's key is that you don't have to keep everybody's account looking the same. That's an impossible thing to do. It's so difficult to try to make that happen, and the software can handle contributions of any size. So there's no need to make all these accounts the same. As people come and enter the club at different times and leave the club, you're not going to be able to keep the accounts looking the same anyway. So I would suggest that you start off with a flexible capital contribution and let people determine what they're going to do on their own. You might want to counsel somebody that wants to drop $10,000 into the club all at one time. The club's not there for that kind of contribution. The club is there for a regular contribution on a monthly basis. And I think you should ask your members to decide what's comfortable for them. I'm in clubs where people give the minimum 50. A lot of people will put in 100 per month, and we have some single people that put in 200 or even 250 per month. I think that each member can make a decision as to what's a good regular contribution, and then urge them to stick with that contribution on a regular basis. You're going to also need a regular meeting time, like the second Tuesday of the month or the fourth Wednesday or something like that. But, you know, it's going to be almost impossible to come up with a date that satisfies everyone. So don't let this derail the whole process. As the leader, keep reminding yourself that you need to find a date that works for you and for as many other people as you possibly can pull together. If you're lucky enough to get all 11 people on a particular day of the month, that's great. But if you can only do 10 of the 11, deal with it, excuse me, and keep moving on. Carol, can you talk to us a little bit about better investing and how important that's going to be to the whole process?
Absolutely. Better Investing, really, that's how the organization got started, was around investment clubs, and so we do have a lot of experience in it. And we have materials that are going to be available that are going to talk about what the due structure is, you know, what's the club fee versus each different type of membership level for the individuals, and what do you get for that membership benefit? What do you have access to for education and tools? We're really here to support you in helping you not only as a club, but in your learning as a club. So there's a lot of free beginning investing classes that are available to all the members. And it can be a big benefit if you have access to a projector, a laptop, or hook up to somebody's widescreen TV, that you can really have a demonstration of the website and just see exactly what all those great resources are that are available through Better Investing.
Yeah, I want to especially emphasize the fact that all Better Investing members have free access to our complete beginners series of classes. If you've pulled together a group of novices that know next to nothing about investing, there's no better place to start than with our beginning classes. It's a series of 5 classes that you can all take together, or you can take individually. You can do it on free time. You can watch them a second or a third or a fourth time, or maybe watch them before the meeting and then watch parts of them at the meeting. There's all different ways to take a look at these classes. There's all kinds of classroom exercises that accompany the classes, and there's resource people available to answer your questions about these classes. It's all free once you join Better Investing. Well, by now, your head must be spinning. You must be thinking to yourself, this is a task that is just going to take me forever. I've told you so much, and yet it's on a pretty step-by-step basis, and I would urge you, if you're interested, to find a helper and get started to see if you can make this whole process happen without too much difficulty. Take a deep breath. I love these three words: relax, breathe, and especially smile. Remember that there's help out there for you. Carol and I are here for you. And right now we're holding the hands of a couple clubs each, and we'd be glad to hold your hand as well and walk you through the process. We can answer questions on the phone, we can answer email questions, and there's a lot more support than just Carol and myself. Carol's out in the Puget Sound area in Seattle. I'm up around Saginaw Bay in mid-Michigan, but we have helpers throughout the country, and we have people at our headquarters that can help folks get together and set up a new club. Once you get through your first preliminary meeting, you're going to probably want a second preliminary meeting, and then you're going to want to follow that by your first official club meeting. That's where we're going to take this series. In our next iteration, we'll be talking about that second meeting and the first official club meeting. Remember, folks that come to your second preliminary meeting are probably really interested, and they're probably going to join the new club. Keep it clear that at that second preliminary meeting, new folks can attend. In fact, brand new people can attend the first official club meeting without ever having come to a preliminary meeting if they wish. Keep your club open to new folks. Keep encouraging the people that have expressed an interest to bring a friend and to have them sit and listen to what it is you're trying to accomplish. Now, if you've conducted this first meeting correctly, you've identified some tasks. And before folks get out of the meeting room, ask for some volunteers to get some of the tasks either begun or completely accomplished. If you've chosen a name, or if you have a name before you even begin the process, then ask somebody to find out how to register the name and then make it happen if you need to. Have somebody else investigate where's the website for the EIN number and can we get one assigned to us. Have a couple of the folks begin to gather broker information, and a couple of other folks investigate possible banks and credit unions. Find out if you have a techie. Find out if you have somebody in the group that can hook your laptop to a widescreen TV, or better yet, find you a projector so that you can put what you're doing on your laptop onto the wall for everybody to look at the same time. Have somebody else look for a meeting place if you haven't found a permanent meeting place, and any other job that you've identified, see if you can assign a volunteer. Don't forget that larger groups probably want to have a social chairman, so don't forget to assign a social chairman to deal with drinks or to deal with refreshments or something like that. Before everybody leaves the room, try to have a job assignment for every single attendee. And finally, try to get everything done in about an hour and a half to 2 hours. My experience in real life was as a teacher and principal. I learned all kinds of theory about how long people can sit in meetings, and I'm here to tell you that adults are no better than older teenagers, and they usually have attention spans that don't go much past a half an hour or 45 minutes. So you're going to have to really work to keep their interest, and at an hour and a half, people are starting to fidget and they're ready to move on to something else. So keep that meeting short if you possibly can. And again, don't try to do everything by yourself, Mr. Leader or Miss Leader. Ask for help. People are so willing to help, but most of the time they need to be asked, because most of the time they think that they don't know enough to give a hand. In this case, everybody's starting about on the same foot, and everybody can lend a hand to put together a brand new investment club. Our next presentation is going to cover the second preliminary meeting as well as the first official meeting of the brand new club. Here's some real club members looking at you, and they're saying, we were able to do it, we can make it happen, we're making money, and we're also learning about investing, and we're sure that you can do the same exact thing. I'm going to turn you back to our Director of Member Education, Dennis Genord, and Dennis is going to talk you through a couple of things that are available on our website. Dennis?
Thanks, Ken. Folks, if you're interested in learning more about how to start an investment club or about the many benefits of being a member of Better Investing, as Ken has been talking about, and we have a great set of free resources that you really want to take advantage of to get a better feel for what Better Investing can do to help you in this area, and how we can really make it easy for you to get started, not only getting your club formed, but to get you investing in stocks, as Ken has mentioned. So Ken, yeah, on this slide you're seeing, this is the navigation page for the investment club starter kit. You simply enter your name, email, zip code, and you're up and running. You go to the URL at the bottom of the page, www.betterinvesting.org/clubs, and from there, go ahead, next slide, Ken. You will have access to a number of different resources, many of which Ken has been talking about this evening. A lot of the sample documents that Ken and Carol spoke about tonight are available in this resource area. Ken, if you go to the next slide, and let's see here. We good? Yeah, if you want to go next slide, Ken. And in the kit, you'll see a whole area where you can go, where we provide a detailed walkthrough of 10 steps that we feel that you would want to take in getting your club up and running. And there's all sorts of resources tied together through each one of those steps. So we're not just talking at you, we're holding your hand through these steps, providing you every resource we can along the way to make the job easy if you're looking to do it yourself. And so there's sample of our online tools and educational resources. There's an article from the Better Investing magazine that Ken mentioned that our members receive monthly. You'll learn about that unlimited commission-free broker account, Folio Investing, that Ken referred to. So there's a lot of information available to you here. It's all free. It's all there, and there's just as much more that we make available to you to just help make the process smooth and easy. So be sure to check out the kit at the URL, the betterinvesting.org/clubs, and take advantage of all the many resources we make available to you. So Ken, next slide. Another one of the items Ken has stressed is it's always nice to find a local resource person to help you get started. Ken mentioned about going to the Better Investing website and looking under chapters to find a local chapter volunteer in your area that can help you get your club up and running. That's a great way to go. Or looking in the magazine. You can also contact us at service@betterinvesting.org or our toll-free number 1-877-275-6242 that you see on the screen. If you have any trouble with finding someone through the website or the magazine, don't let that hang you up. Get a hold of us. As Ken mentioned, we have volunteers all across the country that are ready, willing, and able to help you in this effort, and really look forward to meeting you and working with you. So one last note before we move on to questions. Ken, the recording and handout, folks, for this session will be available at the betterinvesting.org/videos site, where we archive all of our public and member webinars. So you'll be able to find that within, I'd say, 3-4 days we should have the recording up, and you will receive an email from us letting you know that it's there. And if you want, you can certainly share that link to that video that you get in the email with friends and family, co-workers. Tell folks about the various information that you heard tonight and these resources we're making available through the program. So Ken, I'm good there. If you want to go ahead and field any other questions, you and Carol, and we'll...
Thanks, Dennis. Folks, these are our real email addresses, my email address and Carol's email address. Feel free to contact either one of us with questions. Again, if we can't answer your question, we'll find an answer and we'll make sure we get back to you without too much delay. Carol, do we have any questions from our audience?
We do. We have one gentleman that's looking for information on should your club have a portfolio manager, and I'm going to go ahead and offer my advice on that. I think what we're trying to accomplish in this session is really around the structure and organization of what you need to do to get a club started. There are going to be many, many more roles that a club is going to take on as your club continues to form, like who's going to help kind of shepherd your education program. The portfolio manager is often somebody who's going to maybe help take a look at keeping track of what's the diversification in your portfolio and kind of keep together stock studies, which is something you'll learn about in the Better Investing methodology. So yes, that is a role that many clubs have, but we're probably not at that point yet in describing those kinds of roles.
I agree with you, Carol. I will say that in the clubs I'm involved with, the stock studies for stocks that we own or for stocks that we are considering belong to the club, and they are coordinated by a person called our portfolio manager, but that person isn't the person that does all of the studies or that worries about making changes to those studies. Those are things that the club does as a partnership, and it's important that the entire club speak as a group and understand what they're buying, what they're holding, and what they're potentially going to be selling. What other questions might we have, Carol?
There's one other one around do your clubs have a maximum ownership by any individual?
I think you'll find in any partnership agreement that you get from us, any sample partnership agreement, I think you'll find variations on this idea of maximum ownership. Each partnership, remember, is unique, and each partnership can finally handle the question in any way they choose to handle it, but most partnerships find ways to limit the total ownership by any one person to perhaps 20 or 25% of the club, and then they find ways so that that person can continue to stay active, but they won't continue to grow their percentage in the club until somebody else catches up and helps them reduce their percentage a little bit. Again, it'll be spoken to in these partnership agreements, these sample agreements, and after the first 6 or 7 months, I think you can sit down and you can adjust that in any way that you think is going to fit with what your club is trying to accomplish.
And I think most of the time that comes into play when you talk about voting. How are you as a group going to make decisions? One person, one vote, or are you going to vote on ownership type level? So,
yeah, Carol, you know, every partnership agreement that I've ever been associated with in a club that I've been a member of has had the option of voting by amount of ownership, and I've never seen that option used once in any club that I've ever been associated with. What's your experience there? We've always done one person, one vote in
right.
every single situation.
My experience is the same, is that the option is there. I have heard a few stories from clubs that I have visited that on occasion somebody has asked for an ownership vote. So it does come up occasionally, but it's very rare.
And again, it's a concept covered in your partnership agreement, and it's not a concept that you have to worry about right from the very beginning. Nobody's going to own very much of the club because you're not going to have very many resources for the first 6 months to a year. You're all going to be contributing relatively the same amounts of money, and by the time you get to the place where these issues become important, you'll have had time to carefully consider how you want your partnership agreement to handle the issue.
I think it's really important to, again, even though this is a business partnership, is to remind folks that the main goal of the club is the education and the learning, and that you're just using this partnership as the vehicle to make sure that people are taking that all seriously and that you have kind of a scheduled time. You're not investing your life savings in most clubs into your your life savings. You're not investing that into your club. It's usually fairly small amounts of money. So,
when the Wolves Investment Club first formed about 22 or 23 years ago, none of us had personal portfolios. Today we have 16 members, and 15 of the 16 members have personal portfolios. That's the goal of any club, I think, is to teach you how to handle your money in a way that can benefit you, and that means creating your own portfolio, many times duplicating some of the stocks that your club owns. After all, your club's done all the work, all the research, and has decided it's a great stock. Why not own it yourself as well? But the goal is eventually for each person to become independent and create their own wealth through their own portfolio.
Okay. That looks like the end of our questions. I want to thank everybody for their time. I really encourage you all to get organized and think about starting an investment club, and know that we're here to help support you do that.
Investing with friends is a great thing to do, and believe me, once you join a club and sit with some of these people for a few years, they do become your friends, and in many cases they become friends that can help you to significant financial awareness, financial stability, and financial success. Thanks for coming this evening. If we can help at all, there's our email addresses. Drop us a line. Carol, as always, thank you for helping out. It's greatly appreciated. Goodbye, everybody.